Good morning to you all, and welcome to our service here on November 29th at First Parish Church in Weston. I'm Jeff Barz-Snell, the minister, and we are glad you could take a little time to join us on this day. If you are a new viewer, we welcome you. We're glad you have discovered us. And if you are a longtime member and friend, we are delighted you could take a few minutes and tune in. During this strange and challenging time in which we find ourselves, we continue to miss the blessing of being gathered here in person to greet one another, to sing and to pray together, and to come away renewed. Our service this day features local song leader and musician Matt Meyer. Matt has led our worship service here before, and we are delighted to have him joining us again this day. He is accompanied by his fellow musician Alexandra Pham on the violin. In addition, we are joined by our Assistant Minister for Families and Community Outreach, the Reverend Sarah Napoleon, who will light our Advent wreath for today. And finally, Jeff Wheating, our organist, and Rose Hegley, one of our choir soloists, will be here to perform a piece from Handel's Messiah. Our service was produced and edited by Jacob Barz-Snell with assistance from Mr. Max Hall and yours truly. We are discovering it takes a village, or at least a small community, to produce a service. The order of service today was emailed out in our weekly e-newsletter item and posted on our website at our new online worship page. We now join Matt and Alex for today's first song, Gather Your Light.
Our opening song this morning is Gather Your Light, with words adapted from Reverend Angela Herrera. My name is Matt Meyer, and I travel around as an itinerant worship leader and musician, and it's good to be with you all this morning. I'm here with Alex Pham of the Sanctuary Boston Band, where we play together on Wednesday evenings for services. So we're looking forward to singing with you and breathing together even as we're far apart this morning. This song is about gathering our light even when we're far apart, and so I invite you to sing along on the chorus. It goes like this. Gather your light around. Gather your light around. Gather your light around. Bring all that you are. Let's try that. Gather your light. Gather your light around. Gather your light around. Gather your light around. Bring all that you are. Don't leave your broken heart at the door. Don't leave your broken heart at the door. Bring it with you. Bring it with you to the altar of life. Gather your light around. Gather your light around. Gather your light around. Bring all that you are. Bring your joy, bring your passion. Bring your courage and your conviction. Bring them with you. Bring them with you to the altar of life. Gather your light around. Gather your light around. Gather your light around. Bring all that you are. Bring your healing and your need to be healed. Bring your healing and your need to be healed. Bring them with you. Bring them with you. There is work here to do. Gather your light around. Gather your light around. One more, gather. Gather your light around. Gather your light around. Gather your light around. Bring all that you are. Bring all that you are. Bring all that you are. One more, bring all that you are. Our chalice lighting this morning comes from Mickey Scott Bay Jones and her invitation to brave space. Together, we will create brave space, because there is no such thing as safe space. We exist in the real world. We have all caused wounds. We all carry scars. In this space, we seek to turn down the volume of the outside world. We amplify the voices that fight to be heard elsewhere. We call each other to more truth and more love. We have the right to start somewhere and continue to grow. We have the responsibility to examine what we think we know. We will not be perfect. This space will not be perfect. It will not always be what we wish it to be, but it will be our brave space together, and we will work on it side by side.
Today is the first Sunday in the season of Advent. Advent comes from the Latin word for arrival, and in this season we prepare for the coming of God's kingdom and the birth of the baby Jesus. We light the candles on the Advent wreath to remind us of the blessings that arise when the world closes the gap between how it is and how it could be. The Advent wreath itself includes many symbols. The wreath is in the shape of a circle with no beginning and no ending, and has its origins in ancient Northern European practices around the winter solstice. The wreath reminds us that there is no beginning and no ending in God's kingdom, and that divine love and caring for us never ends. The evergreen branches are a sign of ever new life and resilience. The colors of the Advent candles, 3 purple or blue and 1 pink, reminds us of our need for God's help to be the people we are meant to be. The white candle, which will be placed later this month, will be lit on Christmas Eve, and it signifies the birth of the Christ child. Today we light the first candle, the candle of hope. The prophet Jeremiah spoke words of hope to Israel, telling about God's promise of shalom and of a new beginning. We hope and pray for a world of peace and harmony. Hope is like a flame that warms and comforts us. As we light this candle, we celebrate the vision of the prophets to make the world a more peaceful place, to identify ways to move our lives and communities in the direction of what they could be and not just as they are. We are thankful for the flame of hope. As we begin this holiday season, may we be reminded to share our hope with others and feel the warmth of that light.
I'd like to share a story with you all called Miriam and the Tambourine. Now, this story is about Miriam, who was just about to enter the 4th grade. And she was thrilled because the 4th grade was the year at her school that every student got to learn to play an instrument and play in the school orchestra. And Miriam loved music, so she was thrilled. On the first day of class, Miriam showed up extra early, and she walked into the orchestra room, and she got to look around at all of the instruments, wondering which one she would get to learn to play. There was a giant bass drum, beautiful violins, shiny brass trumpets. She saw her teacher, Miss Berman, there, and she said, "Here I am. What instrument do you need me to play in the orchestra?" Miss Berman looked at her and said, "Miriam, right? I think I've got just the instrument for you." She disappeared into her office, and she came out a moment later with a tambourine. "A tambourine," Miriam said. "Is that even an instrument?" "Well, of course," said Miss Berman. "Every great orchestra needs a great tambourine player, and you are our tambourine player." Well, Miriam took the tambourine, but for the whole rehearsal all day long, she ended up having to play the same rhythm over and over and over. It went like this. It went dot, 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 dot. Can you all try that at home? Dot, 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 dot. She came back to school the next day, and for the whole rehearsal all day long, it was that same rhythm over and over. It went dot, 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 dot. And Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, the whole rest of the week, it was that same rhythm over and over and over. It went dot, 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 dot. And you might guess that Miriam was not any more excited about the tambourine at the end of the week than she had been at the beginning. So when she went to church with her family that Sunday, she was feeling pretty sad about it. This was pre-COVID times, and she went into church with her family. She sat down in her Sunday school class, and she was just feeling brokenhearted. Her teacher, Mahesh, noticed that she was looking down and asked her about it. She said, "Well, I was so excited to learn to play an instrument and play in the school orchestra, but I ended up with the tambourine, and I just play the same rhythm all week long. It goes dot, 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 dot." "The tambourine," Mahesh said. He said, "Did you know that where my family is from in southern India, we call the tambourine a kanjira?" Can you all say kanjira at home? He said, "People spend their whole lives learning to master the kanjira. And it's a beautiful instrument. You know, every sound that you can make with the kanjira, you can also sing out. And so people learn and study the rhythms of the kanjira by stringing together the syllables to create poetry out of the sounds of it. Takitagum, gudadengi, natuntum, tatum. People write whole books out of the poetry of the rhythms and the sounds of the kanjira. Where I come from, the tambourine, it's an instrument. Well, it's an instrument for creating poetry and beauty in the world." "Poetry and beauty," Miriam said. Well, that doesn't sound so bad. After church, Miriam sat by herself at coffee hour, and a family friend came and sat with her, Anna. Anna remembered. She said, "This was the week you were going to start 4th grade and learn to play an instrument and play in the school orchestra. How's it going?" "Well," Miriam said, "I ended up with the tambourine, and I just play the same rhythm all week long. It goes dot, 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 dot." "The tambourine," Anna said. She said, "Did you know that where my family is from in Brazil, we call the tambourine a pandeiro?" Can you say pandeiro? She said, "People have been playing the pandeiro for generations in Brazil. In fact," she said, "when my ancestors came to Brazil as enslaved people, they would play the pandeiro to bring their community to be together, to sing and dance and take care of each other, even when times were so hard. And they would even use the music of the pandeiro to secretly practice martial arts and protect themselves against the people that held them enslaved. In my family's history, the tambourine is an instrument for community and safety." "Safety and community," Miriam said. Well, that doesn't sound so bad. So Miriam went back to school the next day, and she saw her teacher, Ms. Berman, there. She told her about the kanjira and the pandeiro, about poetry and beauty and safety and community, but she said, "I don't know what any of that has to do with me. I'm still playing the same rhythm all week long that goes dot, 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 dot." Well, her teacher said, "Miriam, do you know where your name comes from?" She said, "Of course. From my parents." "Well, right," she said, "but do you know who Miriam was? In your family's history, there's a story of the ancient Israelites fleeing slavery in Egypt and traveling to a land of freedom. And while they were making that journey, once they were finally on their way, they threw a wonderful celebration to celebrate that they were out of slavery, that they were on their way to a better place of freedom. And it was a woman named Miriam with a tambourine that got that celebration started. Miriam was one of the first recorded women one of the first recorded musicians even in all of history. And women like her would play the tambourine in ancient Israel and all over the Middle East for festivals and weddings and celebrations. In your family's history, the tambourine is an instrument for celebrating the journey towards freedom and towards love. Freedom and love, Miriam said. That sounds pretty good. Miriam eventually went on to try out some of the other instruments in the orchestra. She played a little bit of the bass drum and a few years of violin and tried out the trumpet. But she always remembered the story of the tambourine, how all around the world and all throughout history, people had taken even the simplest of instruments, the most basic of tools they had in their hands, and found ways to use them to shape their community, to create poetry and beauty, to foster safety and community, and to celebrate the journey we're all trying to make towards freedom and love. And I think that's a little bit of what we do on Sunday mornings when we gather together in whatever ways we're gathering together. It's a time to remind each other of the values that are most important to us, but it's also a time to think together and even challenge each other, to think of how we can use whatever instruments, whatever tools we have in our hands and make the kind of world we want to live in, to make a more safe world, a more beautiful world, and celebrate the journey we're all on together towards love and towards freedom. So thank you for helping me with the story. May it be so. I invite you to join me in a spirit of prayer with these words from Temple Beth Zion. Embedded in my heart, a melody beats, awaiting the conductor's call. I hear it now and again, but only faintly. It disturbs my quest for power with hints of grace. It haunts my dreams of control with intimations of selflessness. It stays my hand lifted in anger and calms my heart when I am tight with rage. It whispers to me of justice and sings to me of compassion. It is the song of God, and I shall sing it yet, but not alone. We each bear the song. We each need the choir. Someday, the song will rise in our mouths, and we will sing together in harmony. Mountains of discord will melt before us. Idols of ego and tribe and boundary will give way, as together we weave a song of wonder, celebrating the many and the one. Together we will sing the world awake. Light is sown for the righteous, joy for those who embrace it, and song may be a chariot to both. Amen, and blessed be. On the day we are together again, on the day we are together again, I will pull you in close like a hoop with no end. On the day we are together again. We will share the same table again. We will share the same table again. I will pass you the salt, the candlelight will bend when we eat at the same table again.
We will walk round the block hand in hand. We will walk round the block hand in hand. We will stop for a snack at the taco truck stand. We will ride
back to work. Someday we will go back to work. May we be among people who respect our worth. Someday we will go back to work. I will help the strangers I meet. I will help the strangers I meet. It is possible to get back on our feet. I will help the strangers I meet. I will write you a letter for now. I will write you a letter for now. Hope is a message that survives somehow. I will write you a letter for now.
To the healers that keep us alive. To the healers that keep us alive. A toast to your knowledge, courage and light. To the healers that keep us alive.
And the ones who we love who are gone. To the ones who we love who are gone. We remember the stories, we sing the songs. To the ones that we love who are gone. On the day we are together again. On the day we are together again. I will pull you in close like a hoop with no end. On the day we are together. I start nearly every day with a to-do list scribbled out on Post-it notes. Between you and me, usually it is an overly ambitious to-do list. And at the top of the list most days is writing. Making time for writing is something that's important to me. It's so important to me to be a writer that every day, first of all, I put it on the to-do list, and every day I sit down and I read books about writing and collect quotes so that I'll have stories and ideas for things to write about. It's so important to me that every day I work on other pressing commitments and finish other important tasks so that someday I'll have a lot of time to write. Writing is so important to me that surely one of these days I will start writing. One of my favorite authors, Anne Lamott, talks about how hard it is, in fact, to just sit down every day and put your butt in the chair and write. She says, "The discouraging voices will hound you. This is all piffle," they will say. And they may be right. What you are doing may just be practice. But that's okay, because practicing is how you're going to get better. Some of the best writing advice I ever got was from a teacher who told me, "For now, don't write. Just write what you would write if you were going to write." I sometimes feel like in all the years since I got that advice, I haven't written anything, but I have written a lot about what I would write if I did write. You might call this the practice of practicing, learning how to practice. The demons of perfectionism stand in the way of good writing, just as they stand in the way of creative risk-taking in general. Which is unfortunate because creating a life for yourself that doesn't yet exist requires some creative risk-taking. And certainly, being your best self in uncertain and anxious times such as these requires setting aside those discouraging voices that hound us and creating a better world of love and compassion in times such as these amidst the violence and the brokenness. Well, that also requires setting aside those voices that show up and say your efforts are just piffle. When the demons of perfectionism show up like this for me, I try to practice the practice of showing up for myself and for others. Musicians know a lot about practicing. One of the requirements for all students at Berklee College of Music, where I attended years ago, is 4 semesters of ear training. Ear training is learning how to sing music just by reading the notes on a page, and it's learning how to write down the sound of a song on the paper just by listening to a song. And when I first began college, I knew that there certainly were people who were capable of this kind of magic, but it all seemed like some kind of Harry Potter nonsense to me. Like, you may as well ask me to make a feather float above my desk using my conductor's baton. On the first day of ear training class in particular, I remember there was a sort of nervous silence among all the students. Silence except for one student who was actually quite loud in his nervousness. This one student interrupted the teacher in the first few minutes of the very first class to share that he was worried the class was going to be too advanced for him. He wanted to make it clear that he knew, in fact, not a single thing about ear training. The teacher kindly paused his introductions to respond, saying that we had all taken entrance exams, and he was sure we'd been placed in the appropriate class. The teacher tried to continue, but was interrupted again. "Well," the man responded, "is this the very lowest class? Because I need to be in the very lowest class." You could tell the teacher was a little embarrassed to have to explain to us that, yes, we were in fact a class of the most basic students in the school. "Well," he said, "it is Ear Training 101, so it is the lowest. There is, I guess," he said, a class for people that have previously failed the 101, but you all are just about the lowest." Now, some of the other students in the class giggled a little at this man's anxieties. But I was actually kind of glad to hear that someone was questioning the absurd notion that ear training could be taught. I don't know what happened next for that student, but he actually never came back to our class. Not because anything we did on that first day was in fact too hard for him, I'm sure, but I think he lacked a belief that improvement was even possible. I kept going, thinking that if others had done this before, it must be somehow possible, and I made a commitment to at least practice the material. I've always remembered this other student, though, who gave up before he started. It's not just that he didn't try to become a master at ear training, it's that he didn't even try the practicing of it, which always struck me as the real loss. When the discouraging voices hound me, I sometimes think of him, and I remind myself that maybe for now what I'm doing is just practice, because practice is how we're going to get better. These last few months have been a time of uprisings around our country calling for change, calling on those in power, which in some ways is all of us, to learn some new skills, to play a new tune, to learn some new ways of being in our communities and in our society together. Particularly for white people, this is a time to practice some new skills and learn some new roles in our lives. It's a time for studying up on the racist history of our country and the racist present of it. This is a time for listening in deeper ways we haven't always done so well before. It's a time for having some hard conversations we haven't yet practiced enough. Fellow white folks, if you see black people in your community making demands, practice amplifying those demands by repeating them in calls to your representatives, in calls to your colleagues, and to your family. If you inherited wealth that was accumulated in a time of segregation, which is true of all wealth in this country, it is time to practice giving it away. If your muscle memory has been to call the police when something goes wrong, it is time to practice something different, learning new skills for community safety and accountability. I know I won't all of a sudden do all of these things, but I will practice the doing of them. Musicians know as well as anyone that muscle memory is very real. We know that slow and consistent practicing changes the very structure of our brains, rewiring our circuitry and forging new connections and new possibilities. No one is born a musician. Even songbirds need elder birds to sing to them and teach them the tunes. Practice doesn't make music perfect, but it makes music possible. And so let us practice the practicing together. Practicing justice and equity and compassion, these won't make the world perfect, but they make a better world possible. I know that someday I want to be an expert in justice and compassion, even when anxiety moves in the air like a storm. I know someday I want to be well practiced at creating brave space, even when there is no such thing as safe space. These are daunting tasks, to be sure. On most days, the idea of learning to transcribe a symphony seems more manageable, but that's okay. For now, I don't have to do all of those things. I just need to practice doing what I would do if I were doing them. And so, dear ones, don't promise to be your best self today. Just be the person you would be if you were practicing being your best self. Don't try to rebuild a new world in the image of love this week. Just practice doing what you would do if you had committed to such things. You have the right to start somewhere and continue to grow. We all have the responsibility to examine what we think we know. Let us start together. Let us grow together. And let us practice together. May it be so.
I often say that we drink from wells dug by our ancestors long ago, and we sit in the shade of trees we did not plant. It is now our responsibility and our privilege to plant those seeds for future generations. Many of you have asked how you can support First Parish Church in our work here in Weston and around the region, especially when we're not together on Sundays. You can offer your financial support by mailing a check to the church office, or you can log into your bank account online and set up a one-time or periodic donation, or you can use our PayPal account. And the easiest way to do that is if you have a PayPal account yourself, and then search for our office email address, admin, A-D-M-I-N, at firstparishweston.org. We should pop up as an authorized recipient. Regardless of the means by which you contribute, we thank you, the members and friends of this congregation, for continuing to support our church's voice, our mission, our presence, and our work in the world. What we do here matters, and it is worthy of our support. Thank you.
Olam chesed yivane. Yadadai, 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 yadadai. Olam chesed yivane. 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 Yadadai, yadadai, yadadai. I will build this world. I will build this world with love. Yadadai, yadadai, yadadai. And you will build this world with love. Yadadai, yadadai, yadadai. And if we build this world with love, yadadai, 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 then God will build this world with love. Yadadai, yadadai, yadadai. Olam chesed yivane. Yadadai, yadadai, yadadai. Olam chesed yivane. Yadadai, yadadai, yadadai. Olam chesed yivane. Yadadai, 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 yadadai. Olam chesed yivane. 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 Yadadai, yadadai, yadadai. One more, here we go. Olam chesed yivane. Yadadai, yadadai, yadadai. Olam chesed yivane. Yadadai, yadadai, yadadai. Olam chesed yivane. Yadadai, 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 yadadai. Olam chesed yivane. Yadadai, yadadai, yadadai. Olam chesed yivane. Yadadai, yadadai, yadadai. Olam chesed yivane. Yadadai, yadadai, yadadai. Beloveds, don't promise to be your best self today. Just be the person you would be if you were practicing being your best self. Don't commit to rebuilding this world in the image of love this week. Just practice doing what you would do if you had committed to such things. You have the right to start somewhere and continue to grow. We all have the responsibility to examine what we think we know. Let us start together. Let us grow together. And let us practice together. Go in peace, go in love, and go and be blessed as you are a blessing to others. Guys, let's do that one more time, and I'll not mess up that word that I messed up. Okay. Beloveds, don't promise to be your best self today. Just practice being the person you would be if you had committed to such things. Don't commit to rebuilding this world in the image of love this week. Just practice doing what you would do if you had committed to such things. You have the right to start somewhere and continue to grow. We have the responsibility to examine what we think we know. Let us start together, let us grow together, and let us practice together. Go in peace, go in love, and go and be blessed as you are a blessing to others.